Welcome, everybody, to the Dolphins Make Me Cry podcast. We are in week 9 already, and hell froze over. The Dolphins not only won a game, they won a game on the road, they won a game in convincing fashion, they won a game in all 3 phases of the game. Oh my God, we're in the Twilight Zone. Completely impressive, completely not seen. Matter of fact, 92% of people that bet on the Dolphin-Falcons game bet Atlanta, including yours truly. Did not see this coming, but as a diehard Dolphin fan, I am glad that it did. And I know there's going to be a lot of fans who, and myself included, you're thinking about your top draft pick and all that stuff. And the reality is this. When you win games like that are hard to win in the NFL, you need to enjoy it because they come few and far between. And myself, someone who was there at the game, the experience of seeing that in a road environment, shutting down an entire fan base that literally from almost the second or third drive was completely out of the game. And not for nothing, Atlanta, you are a fraud fan base because they were exiting that place prior to halftime and they were quiet on third downs in general. One of the quietest road stadiums I've ever been to, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. The Dolphins get it done 34-10, beating the 3-3 Atlanta Falcons, bringing the Dolphins record to 2-6. And what does it all mean, Dolphin fans? It means a lot in one regard, but it means a little in the big picture. Let's face facts. We can say, quote unquote, the season is over, even though last year they were also 2-6. They reeled off 6 straight wins. They got themselves to 8-8. They got themselves to within that last game, beating the Jets, plus a loss by the Chiefs of making the playoffs. And then we all know what happened. They lose the game to the Jets, and the Chiefs get blown out by the Broncos. Is this a repeat of that? I'm here to tell you I don't think it is. Would I love to sit here and tell you that I think they're going to reel off a bunch of victories and they're going to be in that playoff mix? Yes, that's what I want. That's ultimately would be great because this season has been brutal for a plethora of reasons that I've talked about on this podcast every single week. But where we're at right now, you're just hoping and living to fight another day, specifically if you are Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer, who were 100% behind or under the microscope, being scrutinized for everything that's gone on this year: discipline, lack thereof, lackluster roster, poor coaching, just all the things that you've heard about out of Miami Gardens this season for the Dolphins. But we get this massive victory where literally they finally stopped the run and ran the ball. And eureka, isn't it amazing what happens, Dolphin fans, when you can actually do that and you actually don't play to being one of the lowest ranked rushing teams in the league and the lowest ranked defensive teams against the run. It was like a completely different team. So first on the run defense, I'm going to give them a lot of credit, and I'm also going to give them credit in this regard. They built on what they did in Cleveland. Even though they lost the game 31-6, that game was a complete loss on the offense. Offense was inept, couldn't connect on anything, 2 was terrible interceptions. It was just a complete shit show. But defensively, you saw some life. They stopped the run for the most part, barring that 140-something yard run. And then obviously we talked about the inopportune penalties on some of the third downs that kept them on the field. But they came out and they swarmed the Falcons defensively, particularly their run game. Now, granted, Falcons had some guys out. Falcons had Michael Penix out. So you had Kirk Cousins. So yes, if you want to be, a cynic about all this, you played their quote unquote backup quarterback who hasn't played in a little over a year. But I don't know if it would have mattered. They swarmed on defense. And obviously Atlanta, like everybody else, knew and thought, hey, we can run on this team. They're the 30th ranked run defense. We can run on them. We're going to run on them, and we're going to just barrel and bull them over. And they basically attempted to do that, and the Dolphins were up to the challenge. Great game by Brooks at linebacker. think he had about 10 tackles. He was flying around. Defensive line, Zach Sealer, Kenneth Grant. And it's interesting, Kenneth Grant, we've talked a lot about rookies. You're now getting into that second half of the season where typically rookies, specifically on the D-line and O-line, start to kind of figure it out, make their move, and we kind of figure out, a little bit of what we have. It happened last year with Chop Robinson. But you saw a lot of penetration on the defensive line, and you saw a swarming defense, and you saw a secondary that was flying around, and they were making plays. They were getting in Kirk Cousins' face. They were getting off the field. And what was so amazing about the defensive run stopping and then the offensive run game was they finally played a true game of complementary football. What we've been screaming about as Dolphin fans for essentially a year and a half at this point, because we have not really seen much of it since 2023. And even there were a lot of spots in 2023 where they basically just won because their offense was so good, or they played a bad team and they had a defensive performance that was so good. But playing that complementary game has not been their forte. Reason being why many Dolphin fans want Mike McDaniel to be fired, because he does not play that strategy. Now, in complete fairness to McDaniel, this was his, by far, maybe not his best game, probably his most complete called game. And I think he's finally realizing, hey, number one, I have to change this offense because I do not have Tyreek Hill. I don't have Darren Waller now. I don't have a lot of these weapons. I have to do something differently. Plus my job's on the line, and I better do something differently. And they came out and they led with the run. And what's so amazing about when they lead with the run is Tua, as a quarterback, his effectiveness is when he can roll out and work off of the play action pass game. So in this particular game, they finally did just that. They rolled him around. He was efficient. He wasn't great. 20 for 26, 4 touchdowns. A very good, efficient day. And what I want from a Tua, what I used to want from a Tannehill, when you give them the run first and you can establish the run first, it puts everything in front of you. Also, that worked into the score being in front of you, going up 7-0, 17-3. They were then able to kind of pin back, run the ball effectively with both Devon Achane and Ollie Gordon, who's now Mr. First Down on short yardage. And it gave then Tua the ability to have the windows open for himself off of play action passing, to start getting some different guys involved. He had the beautiful pass to Jalen Waddle. He had the beautiful pass to Ollie Gordon. And you started getting production out of a lot of these guys that you thought earlier in the season they needed to do more with. Short yardage. It was a huge problem last year. It's been better this year with Ollie Gordon. They haven't really had to use it, or they haven't been in a position to use it too much. But he was amazing on thirds and shorts and 4th and 1 in converting to first downs. This also was a game where the Dolphins did not kill themselves from a penalty perspective, where they did not, have the crazy blunders in time management. It was overall one of the most crisp games that Mike McDaniel has coached, and I will give him all the credit. Now, what changed for this team? After the game, Mike McDaniel said offensive coordinator Frank Smith, who's typically up in the booth, was on the sideline, so they changed that up a little bit. You can say, what does that mean? Does that make that big of a difference? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'm sure it's a factor when you boil it all down. But overall, they did the things that you thought going into this season, if they were going to be effective and have a solid season, because the roster does not have the crazy talent that you did in 2023 and even parts of 2024, this is the brand of football they were going to need to play to be effective. And they finally did it. Now, maybe too little too late when you're 2-6, but can the Dolphins build on this? And this is a very intriguing week. This is a very intriguing game. This stretch of games, this next 2 weeks, is going to really tell a story to kind of see where the future is of this team and this franchise, because you're playing a Baltimore Ravens team that has been beat up. They have been very disappointing at 2-5. They've obviously had Lamar Jackson out for the last 3 weeks. It looks like he's definitely going to play. Of course, lucky us, he's going to come back for the Dolphin game and be healthy off of a hamstring injury. And the Ravens have had a lot of injuries this year defensively. They've lost a bunch of games they should have won, like the first Bills game where they had the big lead. Their defense is not the old Baltimore Ravens defense. So I actually expect in this game a little bit of fireworks because I do think the Dolphins, with this offense now, can effectively run the ball, create the play action passing, do different things, even with the fact that they're down some weapons here, obviously Waller and Tyreek Hill. But I think you're doing some different things here. Waddle, run game, obviously passes to A-Chain. They got Nick Westbrook-Akine involved. He should have had a walk-in touchdown that he was a split hair behind being ready for it, hit him in the face. It happens. It's going to be one of those, things. He's still working on his timing with Tua. But if you can get a guy like him involved in the mix, big body receiver, I think the offense can definitely take strides. But the core has to continue to be that run game where they rush for 140 yards, which was the highest total of the season, what we've been clamoring for forever. Because if the team runs the ball and they can establish it early, they have a good shot to win. If they do not run the ball, it just pulls everything in from a defensive perspective, and all of the deficiencies that Tua has come to life because the defense can 100% exploit him because they know there's no threat of anything else in the run game. So, bringing us to this matchup with the Ravens, short week. They came off of a big victory, scoring 30 with Snoop Huntley, former Dolphin from last year, in Lamar Jackson's absence. This team, to me, the Ravens, I think they're going to get healthy here. They're getting their quarterback back. Their division is ripe for the picking, even though they're 2-5. They're a team that I think could absolutely go on a run. I think this is a very, very tough spot for the Dolphins, but can they build off of the performance that they had, and can they play that sound complementary football that's smart, not beating yourself, good in the trenches, running the ball, stopping the run, playing good special teams that they did as well. Their special teams had a very good day, really winning the game in all three phases. Now, where we look at the next 2 weeks, the trade deadline is now about a week and a half away, beginning of November, I believe the 4th. I still think the Dolphins are going to be sellers, obviously, but they're probably not going to sell as much as you think. We talked about Jalen Waddle on the market. We talked about Devon A-Chain on the market. Obviously, Chubb, he's probably definitely not going to be on the roster after the trade deadline. Jalen Phillips. I think Chubb will be traded because of the nature of him and his contract being so high, and he's not really a piece for the future. But I think the other three guys will be here because ultimately you're not going to get the high price number in a draft pick that you're looking for, and you're going to look at it and say, is it worth me trading A-Chain or Waddle for a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick? It's really not. If somebody's going to give you a 1st or a 2nd, sure, I'll have that conversation. Probably not going to happen. And you also need the cupboard to not be bare. And these are players who are in their prime. In Waddle's case, his cap number is $11 million next year, so he's not killing you. A-Chain running back, he's going to come up for a contract. Running back contracts are not killing you either. And again, you're just not getting back that trade value. Now, what this also did was it saved, obviously, Mike McDaniel's job for another week. And let's just be real. I don't think at this point the earliest Mike McDaniel would be fired would be the bye week, which is essentially 3 games from now. Ravens, home for the Bills, Commanders, which is the Spain game, and then a bye week. If they turn this into 2 and let's call it 7, 8, 9, 2 and 9, or 3 and 8, or whatever, could I see it at the bye week? Yes. It's probably not going to happen because Ross, we've said it a million times, I think he believes in McDaniel. He gave him the 2-year extension, so he's obviously paying him also. And I ultimately think he doesn't want to have egg on his face, look like he made a bad decision, Plus, he wants to look at things as saying, if we're bad, let me ride it out. Let me see where the chips fall where they may in a draft pick, and then I can move on at the end of the season. And at this point, there's no real reason to do it. Clearly, you're coming off this victory that was much more convincing, obviously, than the terrible loss in Cleveland and what's gone on in the season in general. I think at this point, you let it ride. And unless you're a 2 or 3 wins in that bye week situation, that's the only way you're going to do it. And you're going to do it because you know the future. We got to start planning for it now. But look, if you're a Dolphin fan, you enjoy anything that you can get. You enjoy every victory that you can get. And in the victories, you look at what are our foundational pieces? What are our building blocks? What are we as a team? What's our identity? And where are we going from here? And what you love about this game is you hope, whether it's right even for the rest of the season with McDaniel and then into who the next coach will be. This is the formula for not only Tua to be successful, but in my opinion, a winning Super Bowl team where you can run the ball and stop the run and control the trenches in the line of scrimmage, then having a good, great, or franchise quarterback who can make plays. You're setting him up for success. You can win consistently in the playoffs. Maybe not a Super Bowl, maybe not even going to a Super Bowl with Tua if you give him this structure. It's the same thing that happened with Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill left Miami. He goes to Tennessee. He gets Derrick Henry, ironically enough, who we're going to see on Thursday night. He gets a very solid run game, good coaching, good line, good defense. Doesn't have to do too much. Can manage the game. He can go that 18 of 25, 20 of 26 like Tua went. They can convert that much in the pass game and just do enough to not lose the game, but not win the game, but make a couple of big throws here and there when needed. But ultimately, it's a team victory that can get you a division title. Obviously Tannehill had gotten to the championship game with Tennessee. You can do a lot of those things with Tua. And when you look at next year and you look at the fact that Tua is going to be on the books unless they rip the Band-Aid off and take that massive cap hit, this is the building block team that you need to build and continue to build on going into next season with McDaniel or without, or even with Tua or without. Because whether it's Tua or the next young quarterback that you're going to draft, this is the formula for winning. So for that was super duper exciting because Mike McDaniel won in 2022 and 2023, obviously with the dangerous Tyreek Hill, the speed, but there was just very few and far between instances of full-on winning and complementary football. So I'm going to give him all the credit in the world for what he did in this particular game to win this game the way that they won it. This is the way Dolphin football needs to look moving forward, irregardless, like I said, of the personnel, the coach, the GM. This is the formula for winning. And Dolphin fans, we don't get to enjoy it for long because bang, quick turnaround. Luckily, we're at least the home team, so we don't have to travel when we play the Baltimore Ravens, which very intriguing game. Obviously, quote unquote, two bad teams record-wise, but it means a lot for both teams, and it's really going to tell the story for the Ravens of, number one, if they're going to have a shot to win their division, and then number two, is it only going to be a shot to get into the playoffs? So, that being said, Steve Gio's Miami Dolphin pick in the league where they play for pay. Ravens at Dolphins, Thursday Night Football, Hard Rock Stadium. Dolphins coming off of a huge victory. Ravens coming off of a big victory. Ravens in the midst as well of the scandal of Lamar Jackson and how they reported him on the injury report. But make no mistakes about it, I will be completely floored and shocked if he does not play and start on Thursday night. So that being said, the Ravens, a road 7.5 point favorite. Over under is 50. Very, very interesting game to me. I'd love to sit here and say, because of the Dolphins' amazing victory, that I feel super confident that they've turned a corner, that they've fixed things, that they're going to continue to play this way moving forward. I want to believe that. I want that to happen. I hope that happens. However, I'm picking the Ravens to win this game. I don't think they're going to cover the 7.5, and I do think we're going to get an exciting, slightly higher scoring game. I think the Ravens will win this game by 4. I think it's going to be 34-30 Ravens. And the problem of this game for the Dolphins is you're going to deal with a running quarterback, even though he's coming off of an injury, and you're going to deal with Derrick Henry, who is just coming to kind of get his mojo back. He's had some fumbles, he's had some things, but Derrick Henry is a very stout, solid, big back who's very hard to get down, and I need to see it to believe it by this Miami defense that they're not only going to be able to take care of a running back, but also a running quarterback who in the past has given them fits if you go through the years, barring a couple of years where the Dolphins have actually stopped them. I think back to the Thursday night game that they played back in 2020, and then also the massive comeback in Baltimore that happened in 2022. But then you have the game in 2023 where the Ravens killed them. I believe it was 56-10 or 17. So, hope that I'm wrong. I would take, again, the over on the 50 because I think it's going to be a high-scoring, exciting game because I don't think neither of these defenses is really that good. But if I'm wrong and the Dolphins win and we go to 3-6, it'll get very intriguing because then the Dolphins will have won 2 in a row. You're going to get a little bit of a mini bye week right before you get the Buffalo Bills at home, which clearly is our bugaboo, a team we cannot beat. But very, very interesting game for the Dolphins because of what it means for coach, GM, and trade deadline. So that being said, we'll see you at Hard Rock Stadium Thursday night. Let's go Fins, make it 2 in a row. Keep things exciting. Let's knock out the Ravens. We'll see you next week.